fairly quiet week at Massey's, new mystery footings at Sanchez, Star Factory expansion continues at the build site, and Pad B tower stacking nears completion at the launch site. Welcome and thanks for stopping by for this week's Starbase Flyover Update episode 55, brought to you by the one and only RGV Aerial Photography. I'm Jeff A and I'll be your guide as we check out the unrelenting progress at SpaceX's facilities located at Starbase in Boca Chica, Texas. There's not much room in the back of a Cessna 172, so buckle up, sit back and enjoy the views from 10,500 feet. Our flyover will start at the Massey's test site, then move on to Sanchez and then the build site, with our final destination being the launch site. We also have some awesome ground photos this week. Here we are at Massey's, where we'll start with the usual look at the labelled map. Unseen in this photo, Test Tank 16 was transported to the Massey's test site on Saturday, August 16th, after undergoing work in the Star Factory. We hope to see the test rig in action again, possibly even with the use of the crusher cap given the extensive work it has recently received. Crew have replumbed the oxygen vent along the retainer wall to the previously mentioned diffuser. Possibly for the first time in Starbase history, there is very little to report at Massey's. Let's move on to Sanchez, shall we? Here's the map to get your bearings. Now at the opposite end of the spectrum, this week's Sanchez has been packed with activity. Let's start by looking at some. Yeah, you'll hear this again, concrete work, where 4 squares have been torn up. The speculation is that this might be the site where SpaceX is going to build the next orbital launch mount for Pad B. If so, this OLM will be a complete redesign and much simpler. We'll keep an eye out on this. At the transport stand construction area, we finally have progress, or maybe the opposite, as the almost ready booster transport stand got its hold down clamps removed. But don't worry, as the new ones have already been spotted ready to be installed. This is something important because SpaceX might have some use for this stand very soon. During the regular show and tell, it was speculated that the rust visible on the sides could be the reason for the swap out. The new ones appear to be manufactured with a different steel or have a protective coating to help avoid this. Moving to the Star Factory work stand area, a new structure has appeared. The speculation around this one is that a turntable could sit on top of it, but it's not certain. We'll keep an eye out on this one too. One of our valued members, Chrome Kiwi, has put together this render. We can see how a possible centre bearing system could be integrated. The ship static fire stand was moved back here near the tower staging area after testing with Ship 30. Modules 7 and 8 were moved to the launch pad and have already been stacked. The rapid pace at how they are stacking these sections is very impressive. Now let's look at Module 9, the last section of Tower B. The crown block has been installed, as well as most of the pulley system for the chopsticks. And speaking about chopsticks, recently the push pins that align the booster have been installed. These help align the booster with the middle of the OLM for lowering it in place. Finally, at the Rocket Garden, Ship 26 is back from Megabay 2. Could this finally be the end for this pathfinding ship? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Importantly, Ship 30 is back from its final static fire test, as we mentioned in our previous video. During the week it received its decals, which we were happy to see because Ship 29 didn't have them. Hopefully this is a sign that it is pretty close to being ready for integration and testing at the launch site. Now let's take a look at the build site. Let's first look at the labelled map of this week's updates. Looking inside the open door of Megabay 2, we have a good view of the access levels with many of the newly installed hinge beams. The walking surfaces of these extensions remain uninstalled. The back left stand also has its lift in the elevated position, so the engine work platforms are easily visible. We can't see into the back right corner this week, however Ship 33 is still on the turntable after being stacked on its final LOX tank barrel. All that remains for stacking of this vehicle is the aft section. Ship 26 would make a brief visit to Megabay 2 this week for engine removal. In this clip from Lab Padre, RC-198 was the final engine to make its way back to the Raptor nest behind Megabay 1. At the end of this clip, we also got to look at the version 2 ship methane header tank that was loaded onto a trailer. It's speculated that this article has gone to the McGregor test site for acceptance testing. Shifting over to Megabay 1, the door was closed, so B12, 13 and 14 likely remain in the back with B15 in progress on the 2 turntables. Outside the bay, we see several stacks of chine panels staged for installation. It's unclear which vehicles these are being installed on. Next door in the high bay, Ship 31 continues a slow start in tile work to implement updates already seen on Ship 30. In this ground image, we can see the tip of the nose cone has been scuffed and new tiles are being installed. A quick stop by Tent 4 shows that ship aft flap aero covers have been moved inside, with only this one piece remaining outside near the AC units. On the other side of Tent 4, concrete was poured near the cooling equipment. A crane and load spreaders are staged here, waiting for the chiller unit that just arrived at the end of San Martin Boulevard to make its way back for offload. The 5 pairs of pipe connections in the concrete suggest that 5 of these chiller units may be expected to cool the office building. In this area, the 2 ship forward flaps seen last week have also taken shelter inside. Looking around the front and side of the Star Factory, sidewalks and new concrete have been poured. Soon we may get our first looks along the building without the construction barriers. At the office building, we see the framing of structural steel continues as the factory gets closer to becoming one with the office. Behind the crane, we can see a stack of larger beams that seem to be ready for the larger sections that will likely be for factory use, while the front section may be more mixed use, as the 2 elevated floors may not connect directly to the office floors. Thanks to some great ground images, here we can see progress of the 3rd row of glass on the middle section of the office. Around the corner toward the shorter section, bracket installation for the 4th row of glass has started. Here we also see the open atrium on the left, with the space to the right seemingly having a solid cladding, unlike the glass finish to the taller office areas. Going back to the air, we can see building footings from last week have been finished and backfilled. Extending off the back corner of the office, we are seeing the shape of where the exterior wall will connect the office and factory. This rectangular footing with 2 embeds appears to be where we will see the existing walls of each building converge. We'll need to wait a little while longer to see foundation work continue into the new plot of land. Let's finish off the build site with a look at the village. On the north side of St Jude Street, new construction work has been seen on the oddly shaped wedge plot. This plot may be the site of the sushi restaurant after all. And finally, at the corner of the rec centre, dirt work continues. And with that, let's move east down Highway 4. Let's first look at the labelled map of the launch site. We start this week at the flame trench. We can see the second wall of sheet piles is nearly half done. In the coming weeks, we will likely see this area dug down to begin the build-up of the trench structure. In the southeast area, we can see continued jet grouting with better evidence of the pattern of work. It seems the entire area drilled with piles is being worked on. It is still unclear if the entire soil profile is being stabilised or if a shelf below ground is being formed. Sliding up to the new tower, we can see a concrete pump is now connected to the pipework for filling the legs of the tower. Darker soils around the pump suggest it's been used and cleaned out at least once. In this ground image, the pipework is connected leading up to the connection between modules 1 and 2. This, along with the access hatches being closed on the inside of the module foot section and what looks like some concrete seepage from some of the bolts, suggests that filling of the legs has started up to the first fill port near the bottom of module 1. Staying on the ground, we get a different view of the structure on the back of the tower, where the drawworks winch and dead end of the cable spool will rest. Returning to the air, we see the tower standing 7 modules tall, with module 8 sitting near the entrance. Later in the day, the load spreader would once again be rigged to the crane to be connected to module 8, which would be placed on the tower August 17th. All that remains to top out the tower is module 9. It was moved to the launch site from Sanchez during the night of the 18th. At the possible fluids bunker, we can see that all the formwork has now been removed and the 2 access windows can be seen clearly on the south and west walls. It seems more evident that the floor on the east side does have a slightly lower height. We can also see the shoring that has prevented the excavation from collapsing is now being removed with the crane attached to one of the support beams. Nearby, additional frames are staged to provide extra safety netting at a higher level of the new tower. A recent staple of the launch site construction appears to be finished with its tasks. The BG-45 drill rig was used to place piles in many places around the site is being decommissioned. Here we see that the drill segments and other mass components have been removed and the storage containers and transport bins have been moved here from the corner where they had been stored during operation. This week did not see any noticeable work within the orbital tank farm, though a delivery of steel beams were dropped off in the offloading area. It's unclear what these are for, but their size suggests that they will be part of something noticeable in the coming weeks. Along the eastern edge of the launch site, we can see that the battered explosives bunker used to store the FTS charges has been removed. One would hope that they find an alternate location for the storage of these charges, as this position proved to be closer to the launch forces that it needed to be. Pad A doesn't look much different from last week. We do see the chopsticks are on either side of B14.1, as the latest round of catch testing was in progress during the flyover. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been commenting on the work being done to the chopsticks, but with the aerial photos, we've not been able to show this important work. With this ground image during testing, we can see the catch rail lifted in the position prior to catching. Here you see the dampeners and lift actuator. The 3 test bumper pads are also seen with the scuff marks from previous tests. In this video taken during one of the chopstick closing tests, we see an initial closing of each arm from the fully open position that they are in at launch. They stop partially closed, allowing them to be closer to the approaching booster, and then make a final movement closing fully to the booster, at which time the booster will continue moving down until the lifting pins catch the rail, at which time the dampers will further slow the descent until fully compressed. Before we finish this week, let's check in on a few other items around Pad A. Along the berm wall, the blue pipes from recent weeks appear to be holding for future work. Below them are 4 black objects that appear to be additional catch rail bumpers. To the east of the OLM, a burn plate to be placed on the ring's top surface. Unlike the plates previously added to the deck on either side of the BQD, this one is a more uniform plate that could go in many places, though likely close to the BQD, as that half of the launch ring has seen the most wear from launch. Over at the Deluge tank farm, some protection had been previously spotted on the valves that released the pressure in the tanks to stop flow of the Deluge. This week, those valves have been fully encased, likely added protection against damage during liftoff, as the Deluge farm will be reinitiated during the booster landing burn and catch. And that's it for episode 55 of Starbase Flyover Update. Thank you for choosing to fly with RGV Aerial Photography, and I hope you all enjoyed the flight. If you liked what you saw today, please subscribe for more episodes and content so you don't miss out on the new videos each week, and leave a thumbs up. I'd like to give a special shout out to all the Patreon members who participate in the regular show and tell sessions for sharing their individual areas of expertise. I'm Jeff A, and we'll see you next week from 10,500 feet.